along with some of the information beginning on page 34 of your program booklet. Begins on page 34. And at the end of his presentation, we will give some directions as to our next task. So y'all can have that and know where it's located and where I'm getting what I'm saying to you all. Y'all will get to see that. Just want to remind everyone that as we continue with the afternoon, we want to take a few seconds to recognize the presence of Sister Emily among us. She's the provincial of the Schoenstatt Sisters of Mary for the territory that covers USA, Caribbean, and Mexico.
Is she here?
There she is. Okay.
Welcome, and we're glad you're with us, sister. Okay. I introduced, right? Okay, our next speaker, Deacon Don Rojas, was ordained in 1986. He is a skills development practitioner and educator specializing in the areas of leadership development, entrepreneurship, and formal research. With his doctorate in business administration, he has conducted workshops on mentoring, ministry leadership, and staff development, and has designed organizational development projects for nonprofit and educational institutions. He has conducted workshops and seminars in Puerto Rico, multiple locations in the USA, Costa Rica, Colombia, China, Nassau, Bahamas, and Italy. Within his 21 years in higher education, he was the Director of Management and Marketing at the Pontifical Catholic University of Puerto Rico, and is the author of 10 books and multiple peer-reviewed articles on leadership and spirituality topics. Dr. Rojas was retained as a parish consultant for the Archdiocese of Chicago from 2003 to 2013, and so far has worked with over 40 parishes. He has been conducting workshops for Schoenstatt leaders in Puerto Rico since 2004. Is the current president of the Father Joseph Kentinick Pedagogical Institute and has been an integral part of the diaconate formation program for the Diocese of St. Petersburg since 2006. He was an adjunct instructor at St. Vincent de Paul Regional Seminary. Is a consultant for Mundelene's Pastoral Learning Program and teaches pastoral leadership for the doctoral program at the Institute of Pastoral Studies. He has been active in the Schoenstatt movement since 1968. He is married to Isabel and currently lives in Tampa, Florida, USA. After his talk, we will have time to reflect on his word in silence and then return for the shorter workshops. We welcome Dr. Deacon Ronald Rojas.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, I trust your might. Well, I'd like to thank the invitation to come and speak with you this afternoon. I know that after a great lasagna, I'm not sure that the video is being piped into the rooms, so as soon as they wake up from their nap, hopefully it will show up. One of the greatest observations, at least so far, is that for the presentations, we have like 40 or 45 people, but when it's time to eat, there's 65 or 60. So what does that tell you about the presentations? But it does tell you about the food. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I want to ask a question before we get started, and I know those that are dozing off in their rooms can't answer it. The question is, how many of you have received any formal training on how to manage or mitigate tensions and divisions? Raise your hand. Question again. How many of you have received any training whatsoever on how to manage tensions and divisions in the church or in the work setting, whatever. 1, 2, 3. Should we all be raising our hands? This is how vulnerable we are as leaders. Because if we don't know how to mitigate, if we don't know how to manage those tensions and those divisions, what about those that are entrusted to us? So I think I appreciate the fact that we're doing this. Of course, I've been doing leadership training for quite some time. This is the first time that a group has asked me to talk about how to manage and how to deal with tensions and divisions. So credit to you all for answering that in the survey. And I think it's extremely important, again, because not only to preserve the energies that we have and the zeal that we have for the mission, but also to protect those that are entrusted to us. Does that make sense? See, okay. So you have a primer. It has a lot more details starting on page 34 and ending on page 57, 24 pages. Do you think I wrote these 24 pages? I didn't. This is artificial intelligence in action. This means that we can take advantage of artificial intelligence, but not artificial intelligence is not always right. So there are a couple of things that I had to correct here. But basically, we could use artificial intelligence as a tool. We just have to be careful about it. My students say that they're going to be using artificial intelligence for their assignments. And what I do is at the beginning of class, I show them a couple of mistakes. So you pull something directly off artificial intelligence. And I said, this is what artificial intelligence says, and this is what the textbook says. And they're different. I'm not going to grade you against artificial intelligence. I'm going to grade you against the textbook. So now they're a little more careful when they use artificial intelligence. So it's going to be out there. I recently saw, and this is really something that I had to think about. Now they're offering programs where artificial intelligence can actually help clergy with homilies. And I'm like, I don't want to go. I want to depend more on the Holy Spirit than anything else than artificial intelligence. So that would be my limit right there. But for things, basic information, I guess it's fine. So have a chance, if you have a chance to read it, it's fine. Don't worry about it. The quiz at the end of this presentation is very simple. There's no quiz. So it has a lot of good information. You might see a little bit of redundancy as things are repeated, but I left it in there on purpose because with that redundancy, you'll be able to see how everything is kind of like, it escalates and it goes down deeper and deeper. Some of the main causes of divisions and tensions. But at the same time, if you go into each of the different levels, like a parish level, individual level, you'll be able to see that there's some differences as well. So what I'm trying to illustrate with this is a very complex problem. It's not easy to solve, but this is what we have to deal with. Now, one of the comments earlier was, what does this have to do with lifting up your hearts? I will tell you, if we do not understand how to manage those tensions and divisions that are going to crush our hearts, we cannot lift our hearts. That's what I want to say about hearts and lifting up our hearts. So it's not that we have to dedicate all this time to this project, no, but we have to be aware of what are those divisions and what are those tensions. So I don't want to go very deep into, all the details of what are some of the tensions that are out there, but, the more that we progress, the more that we move forward, we see more and more and more tensions and divisions. Just this morning, if you saw the news, right, with Israel, yes. So, and it keeps on going and going and going. Locally, every nation, there seems to be a problem. Isabel and I, my wife, we like to travel a lot. And, right now we're seeing that our travel is going to be quite limited depending on the things that are happening in different countries. So at the beginning, somebody asked me at the table, are you intimidated by giving this talk? Not at all. I'm fine with it. I mean, I have enough material. There's only one factor that's very intimidating for me, and that's my wife is watching right now in Tampa, Florida. Hi, honey. I'm sure we're going to hear about that in a text message soon. That's why I did not bring my telephone. So I think that there's no need to talk about all the confusion and all the divisions that are out there. But for sure, I want to make sure that we understand the context. And the context is I'm presenting this as part of the response from the survey itself. And of course, we talked about the survey in quite some detail earlier. Now, there is this natural tendency that we have to shy away from tensions and to shy away from divisions. And I guess, we have to overcome those first 5 or 6 minutes of this reaction and be able to sit down and start thinking, start discerning, and start praying. Because some of these tensions and some of these divisions actually are messages that we should start to interpret, and we should start to take action as well. Some of them may not require immediate action. Some may require immediate action. Some may require just a little more planning, what we need to do in the future, next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years. So our reaction should always be, dear God, what are you trying to tell us with this? I'll give you an example. What is God trying to tell us right now with what's happening in Israel? Remember, Israel is also Holy Land, right? So this is, again, a quote. It's always good to start and finish with a quote from Father. And this particular quote, I think you notice that nothing that happens is coincidence. This is something that should not be even in our vocabulary. It should not come out. So, oh, that was a coincidence. No, there's no such thing as coincidences. For the big and the small events that happen, those are significant to us. This is how Schoenstatt came into existence. This is how Schoenstatt grew. This is how it prepares itself year after year. We do this year after year for new work, new battles, and new victories. New battles and new victories. The child of war is a child of providence and wants to remain one forever. Quote from our founder. So we have a responsibility, really, as leaders, to understand the events both large and small, those that happen in our parishes and our groups, but certainly that happen in our nation and other nations as well, and certainly within the church. So what is our typical reaction? What is our main philosophy, so to speak, with respect to world events and our formation in Schoenstatt? With a hand on the pulse of times and an ear on the heart of God. So I use this quote sometimes and I turn it around a little bit. It says, how do you measure the pulse of times? Well, those of you that are involved in political activity know that I can't take your pulse just by your ear. There are places where I can really take the pulse. So we have to pay attention. What are the places where I really want to take that pulse of time? And also the ear has to be constantly on the heart of God. So much for lifting up our hearts, right? So where is the heart? I gave a talk and I turned it around. This was in Puerto Rico. I said, too many people have their heart, they have the pulse on the times, but their ear is listening to the money jingle in the pocket, right? So I turn it around, and once they go over that shock period, I say, no, we have to correct that. And this is the philosophy that we should all have. Now, the example I have there is, the things that happened during COVID, those are not coincidences. Somehow we have to interpret, we have to digest, we have to see what's going on. What does it tell us? I mean, during the lockdown, I was able to, and after the lockdown, I was able to speak to many couples, and they said it was the best time to deepen in our direct relationship in our home shrines because it couldn't go out. And it wasn't only them as a couple, it was also their children. So even though they were locked down, they were still able to continue with their prayer life and actually do something different, bring the kids in as well to do prayer. So that was something that is, obviously it's not good to have COVID and have the lockdown, but how do we interpret that? And I think that everybody is interpreting it differently, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because God doesn't only speak in one way. He speaks many ways, and speaks to the hearts, and speaks to groups, and speaks to nations. So what was your interpretation? What were the lessons learned from COVID? I mean, this is I guess last year entirely was, talking about what were those lessons with some of my students, and they have some very good insights. but at the same time, not of them are Schoenstatters. But in speaking with those that are in Schoenstatt, I said it was a great opportunity to really depend on the Blessed Mother. It was a great opportunity to focus on home shrines. It was very intense in terms of that hunger to be able to speak to a real person at the other end, and I have to speak to a computer over Zoom or whatever to be able to get things done. That thirst, that hunger. And not only that, many said, and my biggest hunger was I could not receive the Eucharist. So I think there's a lesson learned, that we understand that hunger, that we understand that thirst, especially the dependency that we have, the attachment that we have for one another, something personal. Now, granted, does that mean don't use Zoom? No, I think we can still use it. It's just that our priority is that person-to-person contact. That's where the richness of one another. We want to look at each other in the eyes, right? The same thing we want to do with the Blessed Mother. We want to look at her in the eyes and say, what do you want of me? What does this situation, what does this event mean to me? So, brief definition of what I mean by tensions and what I mean by divisions. And you can see that tensions is kind of like something temporary, a disagreement, but something that at short term that can be worked out. But when we talk about divisions, what are we talking about? It's almost impossible to change those positions, and it tends to last a long time. I want to give you an example of each one. Tensions. One of the best examples that I can think about of tensions is the closing of parishes. And I had the opportunity to help Father Carlos Rojas in closing a parish. And the amount of tensions that were available and around for that closing of that parish was incredible. I mean, for instance, parishioners would come to me and say, this lady came up to me and said, my husband died and we did the ceremony here. We were married here. My children were baptized here. Their children were baptized here. Or we did our first communion here in this parish. And you're closing the parish? You're closing my entire life. And that was just one person that approached me. There's so many that say, you're closing a parish. What does that do to me? It leaves me up in the air. But at the same time, is there something positive that can happen? And there was. This priest had the audacity and el atrevimiento to say, the suffering that we have right now in closing this parish, we want you to take it as a seed so we can start Schoenstatt in Tampa Bay. And at the moment, nobody knew it. It says, okay, we'll just go blindly into it. 4 years later, there is a wayside shrine that's about as tall as, even taller than I am, with the Blessed Mother there 4 years later, and the bishop is going to come and bless it. So something good came out of that closing, even though at the moment it was very difficult. It was like taking the sword and just stabbing right through the heart. But something good came out of it. Now, the other one, and that's just an example of tensions and how to convert tensions into something positive. A little bit dramatic, but I think you get the point. The second one is on divisions. Isabel and I had the opportunity to go to China. And on a Sunday in China, we said, we got to go to Mass. So we're thinking, oh, no. How do we know which church, Catholic church, to go to? Because there is the Communist Party Catholic Church and the Catholic Church from Rome. And they all have priests and they all have bishops. So how do we know that we went to the right church? And we're like, okay, so Blessed Mother needs to decide what's going to happen for us, because we really don't know. We're caught in the middle of this division of churches here, Catholic churches. So the church that we went to, they started chanting in Latin. And that for us was a sign, okay, this comes from Rome as well. Because I don't think the communist Catholics would chant in Latin. But then again, it's like, how do you react to those divisions? If you react on your own, you think, you look, you search, you see, check the differences. I think there are ways out of the divisions. And I think that sometimes when we look at tensions, I think they're a little bit easier to understand. But when there are significant divisions, What is our position? Our immediate reaction is, like Father said in his earlier talk, is like, we want to fix things, right? We want to fix it. So if you spend a lot of time fixing problems in the church, but at the expense of your true mission in Schoenstatt, I have a concern about that, right? Now, I'm not saying ignore the divisions, but I'm saying also look at, the amount of time and energy you spend with our mission, so you don't lose that mission seal. So I think in one of the conversations that came up said, so we don't fall into the rabbit hole, right? So it's fine to look at the divisions and look at the tensions, but how exactly do we moderate them? How do we manage to deal with them? So I want to present to you 4 different ways. 4 different ways to be able to deal with managing these divisions. One is recommendations from classes. I do give a couple of classes on leadership, and I've been doing this for 16 years, leadership alone, and research as well. But I think that where I enjoy the most is the doctoral students, the DMin students. There are only like 5 or 6 of them, but we have some very, very intense discussions, some very productive discussions as well. So what I want to do is bring some of that as one of the approaches to how to deal and how to manage with tensions and divisions. The other one is, how does the universal church react to divisions and to tensions? And then again, Father Kentenek's educational principles, I think, provides probably for us the most robust framework that we can find on how to deal with tensions and divisions. And finally, 3 Schoenstatt fundamentals. Those will not be me. Those will be the different sessions that are headed out. I think there's separate rooms. So when we finish this presentation, we'll go directly into those rooms. I'm sure they'll give us instructions on what to do after that. But you have 4 different approaches. So you have a portfolio from which you can choose what is the best approach for you. So it's not like you have to have all 4 of them, but pick and choose whatever works for you best. Now, I think that I want to go directly into the recommendations from this class, this leadership class, and there you have it on the slide. First, leadership is contextual, and let me explain what that means. We have seen CEOs of large corporations that when they retire, they say, I have all these skills. What I want to do now is go give it back to the community. And they start working as executives for nonprofit organizations. And guess what? They fail. Why do you think they fail if they had the skill sets? Well, you can't treat volunteers as employees, for starters, right? So, and they're treating volunteers like, hey, we'd have to do performance appraisals on volunteers. No, they're giving out of their heart. Why do we have to do performance appraisals on it? So we have all these HR principles we have to apply. No, they're volunteers. We have to recruit. No, we do voluntary management training. It's different. So you can see that just because you have the right skills doesn't necessarily mean that you can move from one sector to another. I know, for instance, at one time, the Air Force brought in, workshops on the 7 principles of Covey, and that didn't work. And in the Army, it didn't work either, because those leadership principles are very contextual, and they're very participatory. So there's no such thing as participatory in the Army. I mean, they give an order, you go. It's not like, well, let's think about it. No, you have to go. So you can see that context those principles and that context did not work. The opposite is true, where you have directors and CEOs of nonprofits that end up working for corporate America. And you can see that because of the mix of the context, they're not successful either. So for us, leadership is contextual. And our leadership has something that no other leadership principle or model out there, secular or non-secular, has. And that's 1, leaders are formators. So we have to consider ourselves as educators as well. And the second is that divine providence. Leadership in the secular world does not consider divine providence as something important. So we can benefit from graces within our leadership roles, right? We can benefit from divine providence. So when I see in a parish that somebody comes in and brings in this leadership training program, I cringe because I know that there are elements that are missing. So organizational behaviors aggravate tensions and divisions. And let me explain that one. We confuse organization and community. And here are a list of things that you can compare. Organizations are principles of division. You have a big task, you have to divide it in departments and sections so they can get it done, right? But that doesn't work in a community. A community is, it's a principle of integration. Everybody can everybody can volunteer, everybody can come and donate their talents whenever they're necessary. Take a look at, structures define the relationships in an organization. But in a community, it's the opposite. The relationships define the structures. Look at, for instance, organizations are built, communities are nurtured. I hear this phrase all the time, building community. It's a mix of metaphors, right? It's a mechanical metaphor applied to an organic situation. Take a look at, the actions. Actions in an organization are driven by job descriptions. Does anybody have a job description of what a Schoenstatt leader is? No, that doesn't, no. And I also bring this up in class and say, does anybody have a definition of what a pastor does? And if you go online, you Google it, you will not find definitions of what a pastor does of a parish. Why? Because it's not an organization, it's a community. It's like saying, okay, what is the definition of a father in a family? Does it need a role? Do you need a job description for that? Or do you need a job description for what motherhood is all about? So you can see that sometimes we confuse organizations and communities. You can see that organizations depend on memberships and contracts, but communities depend on partnerships and covenants. So I know that some families treat their families as organizations. Okay, kids, these are your tasks, and you have to do them on Saturday from 9 to 12. And I'm going to put it on the back door, so when you say, I don't remember, it's going to be written right there on the door. But is that really a family? Now, I'm not saying don't give the kids tasks. Yes, give them tasks. But you can't treat them, what are you going to do, fire them? This is a true story of Father Carlos when he was younger. We at the family, we distribute the tasks. And one of the tasks was to do the dishes. So I don't mind doing the dishes, that's fine. And he has 4 sisters, so he's number 5 in the family. So on a Tuesday, it was his time to do the dishes. He has the audacity of saying, that's a girl's job. I walked out of the table and left him with his sisters and his mom because I know they're going to eat him alive. So when I come back, what is he doing? He's doing the dishes. But if he doesn't do the dishes, what am I going to do? Fire him? So I think that we have to be very careful when we talk about organization and community. Communities need organization, and organizations need communities. Take a look, for instance, the emphasis. Because organizations are principles of division, they actually need emphasis on tasks. You need to get the things done. But when I see in ministry that tasks are not done, and they're considering about firing somebody from a ministry because it's not doing the job, it's like, you don't get it. You don't get it. This is not a job. This is a ministry. So if that person can't do it because of whatever limitation, it could be that doesn't have the skill. It could be that doesn't like that. It could be that, is misplaced, should be in another ministry as opposed to that particular ministry. So we have to treat communities as communities and organizations as organizations. So tasks performed by employees or tasks performed by volunteers. Failures can get you fired, but failures for us are learning events because we're here for the long haul. Finally, growth is informed by strategic goals. Growth is informed by the degree of sharing. The more we share among ourselves in a community, the more stronger we become as a community. There's no reason to take a look at, strategic goals. Does that mean you don't have to have strategic goals? No, you have to have strategic goals. One of the parishes that I consulted, the new pastor, as he came in, the parish council had put everything together for the next 5 or 6 years and had a binder like this. And they put it in front of the pastor, and the pastor said, I appreciate this, but let's put this under the table. Let us pray. So they prayed. And they prayed about their future. And they prayed about the parish. And they prayed about the needs. When the meeting was over, you could hear some of the parish council in the hallway saying, this meeting was a waste of time. They didn't get it. And I don't think the pastor kept them on the parish council anymore. But we have to include, and I ask the question all the time, you have your strategic plan? Yes, here it is. What was God's contribution to this? So then I go back and try to do more discernment. I think this gives you an idea that we have to emphasize community behaviors within our community. Does that mean that, we don't pay attention to structure and to organizational attributes? No, by no means. We still have to do that. But organization cannot trump, cannot go over, cannot crush what we do and what we should be doing as a community. So, tensions prevent conformism. Life journey. This life journey principle is not exactly an examination of conscience. Examination of conscience, you're looking for the good and the bad. But when you're looking at revisión de vida, looking at where life is headed, what are those life streams? I will tell you that it is our custom to do, part of our spirituality, to do examination of conscience, and at the same time do reviews of where we stand. We do that all the time. The survey is a great example. When we sit down and we try to discern what is the motto for the next year, so to speak. That is a moment as well. But I think probably for me the strongest one is the example of an entire parish that did this. That they paused, they stopped, and they said, we need to see where we are, we need to see who's with us, and we need to see what needs to be done. They did an entire year of discernment, surveys and all, ministries and all. And they came up with a plan that included, strategic plan, that included God's intervention. And now they're in the process of realigning all the resources to be able to accommodate those needs. What were some of the needs that came out? Hospitality. We were not good at hospitality. People come in and it's like, I guess they kind of meet the person next door or right next to in the pew, but that's it. So we don't know each other. We need to do activities where we can allow them coffee and donuts or whatever, that you get together and we get to meet other people. What was the other one? The other one said, we're being fed spiritually, and we appreciate that. But we need more emphasis on Scripture. So another project, we need to include Scripture classes or Scripture learning within the parish. We don't have anything for youth. But you see that it's just that pause, that discerning, where do we need to go? What's working? What's not working? So we need to do this not only individually as individuals, we also do it as couples for marriage and our families. We also do that in our groups. We also do that in diocese and nationally as well. So I think we're doing it right. It's just that we need to continue to take that seriously and take that within the context of looking at those tensions and those divisions, to making sure that they do not crush our hearts. So, consider tensions and divisions as a challenge to assumptions. This one is one of my favorite ones, because we take everybody in, we educate them, they understand Schoenstatt, they understand the shrine, they understand the Blessed Mother, the covenant, whatever. But then we ask them, what do you know about Catholicism? Oh, I'm very good. I know the 12 commandments. And I tell them, okay, that means you know who the 10 apostles are. And they say, yes, Deacon, I do know who they are. So sometimes we have to be careful with our assumptions. There are a lot of quinceañeras in one of the parishes that I work with, and all of a sudden, some of the quinceañeras come up that are not even baptized yet, and they want a mass, and they want to receive communion because that's what abuela tells them to do, right? So it's like you can see that, you know, this idea of looking at those assumptions and trying to dig it a little bit deeper to make sure we're doing the right thing. So at CCD, it happens all the time with the assumptions. A parent comes up and says, I want my child to be enrolled in CCD. Okay, what's the father's name? Michael? Okay, what's the mother's name? Carlos? What are you going to do? Say, no, it's not the child's fault. But you see that we have to look at those assumptions and say, how are we going to deal with these assumptions? How are we going to manage them in such a way that we can be pastorally responsive, but at the same time, we draw the line on where things are right and things are wrong. So how do you do that balance? And that's probably one of the biggest tensions that we have as leaders. How do we do that balance? How can we respond pastorally, but at the same time, be firm in our beliefs? Providential guidance is a leadership competency. The doctoral students love this one because they say, what is your style of leadership? And they all come up with all these models that are out there in the leadership discipline, transformational leadership and transactional leadership and servant leadership and all these leaderships. And they say, okay, how do you involve grace in those models? How do you involve divine providence in those models? And they don't. They say, those are secular models. They are designed for the secular world. So it's fine if you want to subscribe to any of those models, but at the same time, you have to be careful to make sure that you include what is essential and authentic to our side. Too much competition feeds divisions. When we have, and I see this a lot in youth group, constantly competition. The problem with competitions is you're going to have winners and you're going to have losers. When we did the little exercise on, was it Friday? I was in the loser table. Those who remember were at the table, everybody else was winning, and we're like, what's wrong with us? We can't get this right. So it's like the difficulty with too much competition is that you have winners and losers. And those that find themselves always more time on the loser side than on the winning side, guess what? This is not for me. What we need to start thinking about is more exercises where we collaborate more. I'll give you an example of something I use in a workshop. On a workshop, I have everybody play dominoes. I did this at the seminary in Boynton Beach, and the rector walked in while everybody was playing dominoes. And he's going like, Deacon Ron, I hope you have a good explanation for this. And I'm going like, yes, I do, Father, but I'll get to you later. So they play dominoes, and the first round of dominoes, they're very competitive with each other, right? Two teams, and then they're winners and losers. So I say, I want you now to play a game of collaborative dominoes. And they're like, what does that mean? It means that as you play dominoes, the last piece of domino fits exactly where it should be, and all the pieces are connected. They said, but if we want to do that, we have to change the rules. Yes, you have to change the rules. So they're figuring out how they're going to do this in such a way that they can put all the dominoes there, but none of the dominoes are left out. And I'm saying we have to do this in our communities as well. What can we do to incorporate everybody, to collaborate, so nobody is left out? The other one is trying to fix things and dealing with divisions and tensions on your own. That is disproportional because it's you against evil forces. Let me guess who's going to win. However, if you have a covenant partner, that changes everything, doesn't it? So for us, we have the advantage that we have somebody that can crush that serpent and help us out of the rabbit hole. and get us thinking again about our mission, not in the next 5 or 10 years, but our mission in the next 300, 400 years, and how we link generation and generation and build that church of the future based on our worldview and our vision. So those are some of the ideas from ministry leadership. Now let's talk a little bit about the universal church. How does the universal church react to divisions and tensions? There's always a document out, but if we don't read the documents and we don't study the documents, we're trying to do this on our own again. So if you look at the divisions from the Protestant faith, go directly to Council of Trent. You see how that was managed. If you see that there are divisions from the Industrial Revolution, the church has a response to that. If you see what are the divisions from marriage trends or divisions emerging from the modern world, like you see on the slide, the church has a response. So I guess the question for us is, what is synodality? What does the synod do for us? What is our interpretation? I think that just like Vatican II, the synod is a validation of what we have been doing for a very, very long time. I mean, what is a synod? What does it mean? We gather the information, we see what the needs are, and from there we move forward with a plan, right? We do that every year. That's part of what we do. Not all movements do that. So again, one thing is to look at what does the church say about many of these divisions and many of these apparently contradictions. Because it's a way that if we nurture ourselves, we'll be able to provide better guidance to those that are entrusted to us. All right, so let's talk about Father Kentenich. Let's talk about specifically about the educational principles, the pedagogy. These are a set of principles that I think are the best framework that I can see so far that help us manage tensions and divisions. If we're able to dive into them, to make them real in us, I think that, for me, it is one of the more powerful tools that we have. Now, does that mean everybody try to do this, in a couple of days? No, this is going to take time. But at the same time, how do we prepare for this? How do we get ready? What resources do we have available? How can we share with each other in such a way that we see that we are moving along these different principles? One of the, aspects that I'd like to talk about when we talk about Father's educational principles is the organic way of thinking. I mean, one thing is to be abrupt and to move in like phases, jumps up and down. And the other is like a smooth growth into different principles as we absorb them. Not everybody learns the same way. Not everybody learns at the same pace. And as leaders, I think we know this in our groups where we can see it. Not everybody is moving at the same pace. So we do have to be patient. But again, this approach helps transform those tensions and divisions into opportunities of growth. And let me take some of these one at a time. This is the first principle. The inability to form healthy attachments can lead to loneliness, insecurity, etc. If you do not have roots in somebody, in something, in some place, you're going to be swept away. Does that make sense? So where do we have our roots? We have our roots in the shrine. We have roots with our founder. We have roots with the Blessed Mother. We have roots with each other, right? Those are the roots that we have to continue to look at to make sure that they're strong and that they're healthy, because attachments provides that sense of identity, stability, support. We can look at the traditions that we have, and we can say, doesn't look like something that follows our traditions. And that helps us discern whether it's, a tension that we can take advantage of, or whether it's a seed of division, or whether it's a trap to make sure that we fall into divisions. So, one of the things that I looked at here is, opportunities for growth when we talk about relationships. More and more, I see that young adults, no offense to the young adults that are here, are living with their parents. And those are pressures that come and tensions that come from financial times. That's fine. But there's an opportunity there, right? Same with los abuelos, the grandparents. More and more, the kids are coming back, right? But when they come back, they want to be sheltered. What are we doing as grandparents? We're providing them shelter. And if we're not providing shelter, when the kids come and they're free from their discipline of the parents, what can we do as grandparents? We can show them what love truly is, right? The parents say, you're spoiling my kids. And maybe it's true, but there's a lot of love behind it, isn't there? So why don't we take advantage of those? Why don't we have different type of workshops or different type of activities where we can actually do that and help grandparents be able to develop different techniques to be able to reach out to the kids. And if the parents were not able to pull out a vocation from the kids, maybe the grandparents can do that because the environment is a little bit different. You see these opportunities that are out there? So again, we just have to look at attachments and those opportunities, those links that we have among each other. Zoom is fine, but it's not primary. The more opportunities we have to meet face-to-face, the better. All right, so you can see there, attachments, roots, the simple way of looking at it. Then we have the principle of movement. This is where we have to talk about organic movements. And I put up there 3 attributes of what organic is all about. First of all, organic is slow. Second of all, it's true to nature. And third, it interacts with the environment. I did a little study with youth groups. I bought, you know, you go to the nurseries and you can buy these little packages that have all these little flowers. So I bought one for the boys and one for the girls. And I say, okay, each one pick one up, take it home, come back next month, see what you have. Okay, so the month afterwards, when I see bring your little flowers, see how it goes, the girls, beautiful flowers. The boys, the little plastic container by itself with dirt in it. So it was a lesson. It said, you know, we need to learn how to nurture. We need to learn what these organic processes are all about. But we need to learn how to affect us as well. So when I see somebody, for instance, and I want you to take a look at the example on the bottom, the overwhelming amount of information on Schoenstatt that's out there on the web. I met this person that had been in Schoenstatt for 2 weeks. And he said, I downloaded from Chile the manual for the dirigente, the leader's manual. I'm like, isn't that a little bit too ahead of the ballgame here? Can you spell covenant without K? I mean, this is with a C, right? So what I'm trying to say is, and I'm trying to explain to this person is, you know, let's take these steps one at a time. Yes, there's a lot out there, but you really, really have to be careful on what you pick and choose. And I think as moderators, as leaders, we can help that because there's so much information out there that we have to be able to parcel it out and say, what is appropriate and what is not. I didn't shut him down. I said, keep the manual, but when the time is right, let's talk about it. So, you know, right now, one of the tensions that I'm seeing now that I did not see when I started in Schoenstatt, 1968, 1969, was the abundance of material out there. So we really have to be careful. And not only that, I mean, remember I said that formation was contextual? So what is happening in the needs in Chile may not necessarily be the same needs and the same path in Puerto Rico. So when we bring information in and resources in from one location to another, I mean, yes, let's do that, but we have to be careful at the same time. And somehow there has to be a certain discernment to make sure that it fits better, that we're not trying to, you know, push something that may not be organically, you know, aligned. All right, so slow, true to nature, and at the same time, interactive with the environment. That applies to each and every one of us. True to nature. Is it true to your personal ideal? Or does it seem like it's a little bit off, right? Second, is it true to nature? Is it interactive with the environment? Is it slow? You will interact with the environment and organic processes, because you will affect yourself, your spouse, or those close by to you, your group, and particularly as leaders. So we have to look at this organic, slow, true to nature, and interactive with the environment. So it has to recognize the constancy of tensions. If there are no tensions, there is stagnation. That's it. So we have to look at those tensions. And we have to see the tensions as an opportunity to move forward. Again, not in big leaps, but move forward all the time. All right? I'm looking at time here as well. Principle of ideals. Ideals will provide the direction. Without ideals, we don't have a firm direction. Again, I put it up there, you see it on the bottom of the slide. We're looking at 300 years. We're not looking at, what's going to happen in the next couple of years. So we need to think more long-term. That provides the direction. I wanted a little bit on this one. This is personal ideal disguised as another principle. This is the created me, which is the personal ideal, versus the invented me. And there seems to be this way that I want to invent myself and continue inventing and, creating my own self. The problem with creating my own self is come to a point where they say, God made a mistake. This is what I really am, or this is what I really want to do. And you can see that that is very dangerous. I think you see that in gender issues. God made me one gender. He made a mistake. I should be another gender. Well, you're saying that God made a mistake. That's pretty powerful, and I think we have to think about that before you just, go ahead and move forward. And you can see the differences between one and the other. The slides will be available, so I wouldn't, right? Slides will be available, sister? Yes? Yes. Everybody's going, yes. So yes, those slides are available. Covenant, this is the force. This is where we get the energy to be able to move forward. So we have the roots, right? We have the direction. We have, movement. And now we have the force. Without this force, we're at a disadvantage. Remember, we cannot battle evil forces on our own. This is a way that we guarantee that we're even and that we have a chance to victory. And we will be victorious, by the way. And finally, the pedagogy of trust, or the principle of trust. If you don't trust another person, how are you going to move out of, so to speak, the divisions and the tensions? You can see that what is a big division? A lack of trust. If I don't trust, if there's no dialogue. If there's no dialogue, there's misunderstanding. If misunderstandings are there, what happens? More tensions that eventually end up in being divisions. So there you have it, the roots, the momentum, the direction, the force, and the glue. The glue is the trust. So again, there are 3 workshops that also will continue to elaborate on many of these ways to manage the tensions and to manage the divisions. And you can see there are 3 workshops that are basically living out of the covenant, keeping the faith in divine providence, and building our own family like the Father would like us to build it. So these are the 4 different approaches that we have to be able to, in a practical manner, deal with tensions and deal with divisions. I want to finish with this quote from Father, and I want to read it because I think it's extremely powerful. The world crisis misdirects our attention to secondary matters, thereby hampering our ability to advance and win over others. God's adversary, the beast from the abyss, has a great stake in such temptations and likes to stoke the fires of discord and division. That is all the more reason for us to unite around the one who crushes the serpent and allows our covenant of love to mature into a perfect covenant in the spirit of the 3rd founding document. That's all I have.
Yes, okay, here we are. Thank you so much again to Deacon Rojas for all the wonderful information. So important to know and read up on all of that. One of his points reminded me of something that Noe and I did on Amoris Latte, but by Pope Francis, and the importance of the family and where love starts. Love starts at home. It starts with us, and we build it with our children, and they continue to build it with their family and the community around. And it is the youth that will take over eventually. We want to also, help our youth and continue to share that love, that sursum corda. And if you go back and look at these videos that Pope Francis put out in 2016, they're beautiful videos on the family, on the marriage, and the importance of sharing that love with everyone. And that's a very important point. Many good points that were brought up, but we will continue with our program.
At this time, we want to give everyone some time to reflect on Deacon Rojas's word presentation in silence, and then return for the shorter workshops. Uh, some guidance that can be given to you all to help you out in this endeavor is on page 56 through 57. There are 10 discussion questions that y'all can reflect on. We don't want to give them all to you. I think I would recommend that you all look at number 1, the bottom of page 56, and number 10 on page 57. I think that those two will help you all as you come together during this time, which is noted on your program booklet as time for searching for a response and prayer time. This is on your own, and we have until 3 o'clock to do so in case you all need a short little break to reflect on those questions. You can do it here inside the Kentinick Auditorium, or there is a little shrine in the back, anywhere in the lobby or in the shrine if y'all want to go out there to do that. We'll come back at 3 o'clock for one of the talks that you all will choose from, and we'll point out those where they're going to be held at.
Yes, so when you come back, you will leave so you can have some quiet time, some prayer time, some reflection on what just was discussed. And when you come back, you choose where you want to go to your next talk. The first one, Living Out the Covenant by Mauricio Canales, which is on page 65, will be by the piano. So if you want to attend that workshop at 3 o'clock, it will be over here. The next one, Keep the Faith in Divine Providence by Father Mark Niehaus, which is on page 58, will be in the Joseph England room in the back here in this Father Kentinick Hall. And the last one, Building Our Family Like Father Kentinick by Sister Eileen Johansson on page 61, will be downstairs, and you'll need to take the elevator at the very end of the hall. Okay? And it goes down to the basement. Yes, they're all at the same time. You choose one. So when you come back at 3, either go here to the piano or to the Joseph England, or you go down, you take the elevator downstairs to the basement. And then after that, at 3:30, we will have a quick coffee break. Then we will come back to our breakout sessions where you will go back to your groups 1 through 7, and we're going to, all of you will have attended, there's going to be at least 10 of you in each group. You'll all have attended one of the 3 sessions, so you can discuss that even further at that point. Okay, that way you'll know a little bit about each group. So for this time, we're going to go ahead and go off into prayer time. Thank you.
This message is for the ones who are watching online. We are going to be sending the book and the different texts of the presentations done so far via email.